Today is the third Sunday of Advent, and it is known as Gaudete Sunday. Gaudete is a Latin word that means rejoice. It's also where we get the word gaudy, as in dress gaily, dress gaudily, like you're going to a party. Which is why today is also called Rose Sunday, because the penitential Advent tone lightens up for a day. And we clergy get to prance around in gaudy pink vestments. Manly pink vestments. So I invite you today, on this rainy weekend, with the cold nipping at your heels and all the problems on your heart, to nevertheless step into a sunnier, rosier mood and rejoice. Life is good. It can be good. And we are ever closer to Christmas Day, when God came down to be with us and remind us how precious we are. So no fasting this weekend, only feasting. In today's Episcopal Church, we don't focus so much on the penitential tone of Advent. We actually see it more as a time of hopeful preparation. That's one of many reasons why blue is becoming the color of choice for this season and not penitential purple. But by playing down this sadder tone of Advent that the Episcopal Church does, we risk losing the sharp contrast that this Rejoice Sunday brings each season. So to keep it short and simple today, let me just say, rejoice. Not in a silly, oblivious way, like you're happy dancing down the sidewalk. But in a deeper way, I say rejoice, like you're happy dancing at the edge of a cliff, oblivious, yet trusting that God has got you safe. Now, I'm going to confess something that may be obvious to a few of you. I tend to worry a lot. I get anxious sometimes. And it can get to the point where I spiral downward or feel overwhelmed or have trouble sleeping or functioning efficiently. It's not debilitating, but I don't always realize that I'm in it until I sort of start gasping for air, trying to breathe. Then, because my body is alerting me to the stress, I stop and think, why am I so anxious right now? And I mentally list the things that are stressing me out. Only then do I realize how much I am blowing things out of proportion. There's usually a sermon hanging over my head, a task I said I would do and have put off, a worry about something that's not going well at the church. But once I've listed them all, something inside me, and I don't know if everyone has this, but I hope so, something inside me thinks, but you know, your life is good. So try not to be so anxious. William loves you. The people at St. Luke's love you. And you love them. And your job, though it's hard at times, is pretty wonderful. It's never boring. And what you do matters to people sometimes. It's going to be all right. You can even screw up. And 92 times out of 100, you will be forgiven. So I talk myself down off the ledge, if you will, and then I usually start to feel better. So I then celebrate by finding something sweet to eat. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Well, because that moment of realization that things aren't so bad is how I think of this third Sunday of Advent, this Rejoice Sunday. These days are darker. The weather can kind of stink. We can get overwhelmed by how much there is to do, or we can feel our loneliness that much more piercingly, or miss a loved one who's gone that much more profoundly in December. But this little gift of Gaudete Sunday, this reminder to rejoice, calls us back to center, reminds us that we are loved and that life is good or can be good. I commend this reminder to rejoice to you whenever you are spiraling. And I commend it to you all the year round, not just for today. I'd like to share a few examples of what I call rejoicing anyway that have crossed my path in the past few days. I need to keep the names and experiences general, but I think it's important to remember that on this Rose Sunday, not all is rosy for everyone. Yet somehow they manage to rejoice regardless. A recently widowed former parishioner, whom most of you don't know, I think, stopped by my office to ask about a plot in our memorial garden for her husband. Also, since she and her husband would always bring gift cards at Christmas to us from the Los Gatos Coffee Roasting Company, for me and William and for Michael, our parish administrator, she wanted to carry on that tradition of gift card giving, and so she had a present for me. As I thanked her, took the present, and invited her into my office, she began to cry. I'm so sorry. I can't really be in public without crying. We used to go everywhere together, and it's just not the same without him. So we talked a bit. She happened to bring up another parishioner whom she hadn't seen in years and whom she missed. You should give her a call, I cried. She would love to hear from you. And you know, she lost her husband too. She said she might. Well, the very next day, I got a voicemail from this other parishioner who was absolutely thrilled to have gotten this phone call out of the blue from that widow she hadn't seen in years. And they're getting together for a visit after all these years' absence. This widow, in her grief, reached out and made things a little brighter for someone else. And she gave us generous gift cards that we will use throughout the coming year. Even in the hardest times, we can find ways to rejoice anyway. Her pain did not go away, but she brought joy to others despite it. It was raining so hard yesterday afternoon that I couldn't help but think about our homeless neighbors in Los Gatos, praying that they would be okay. But frankly, also hoping no one would knock on my office door and yell at me for not doing more to keep them safe and dry, how we're not truly Christians here, which has happened more than once before, and for which there is no good response to give in a downpour from the door of my cozy, warm office. So when I heard someone talking on their phone on the bench outside my office, I tensed up. But then I remembered that I needed to get half and half from the parish hall fridge for my coffee. So I had to go out there. On the bench was a woman I had only seen once before. She looked up, smiled broadly, and said, "Hi." "Hello," I replied, and passed by quickly. On my way back, I noticed she was eating a large oatmeal raisin cookie. By the way, I can identify types of cookie in a split second. And the cookie was perched atop an incongruously beautiful ceramic mug filled with tea. She was staring out at the rain, smiling in contemplation, safe under the awning. I smiled and waved my fingers at her when I passed. And that was that. A little later, I heard Jimi Hendrix playing from someone's phone. We have an electrical outlet between the benches outside my office, and homeless people often recharge their cell phones there. I went around and peeked through the window from the copier room to see who was there, and it was an older homeless man whose name I forget. He had a bicycle and was wearing what looked like knee-length leather lace-up women's boots. Because of the nice interaction that I just had with that first woman, I decided, I'm going to give him some of my chocolate that's in my office. So feeling good about myself, I stepped out of my office and presented a Ghirardelli milk chocolate square to him. He glanced at it, said, "Oh, thanks," then went on eating his hummus from a plastic container with his fingers. He too seemed content. In both these instances, I had in my mind a notion of our homeless neighbors as wet, cold, miserable, and angry. And I felt guilty as a result. But these two, at least, seemed content to use our space for eating, drinking, and listening to music without complaint. Now, that may not exactly be rejoicing, but given their circumstances, I wonder whether I would feel so seemingly comfortable in their shoes or in their lace-up boots. Finally, I want to mention a party that was going on in our parish hall last night. A woman from the Friday AA group asked to reserve our parish hall for an early Christmas gathering for anyone in her AA group that wanted to attend. When I went inside to look at the decorations yesterday afternoon, I marveled at the great job they'd done. She and her friends, they were tired but excited. On Friday afternoon, the day before, she had asked me to bless the little Christmas tree she had put up on the piano in the parish hall. It was adorable, and there were about 20 photos of people in frames under it. These are the people from our group who have died in the past few years, she said. Some from drugs or alcohol, some from cancer or COVID. We haven't had a chance to celebrate their lives, so I wanted to do that with this party. Then she pointed to a photo of an older man, and that's my dad. He died last year. And she pointed to 2 teenaged girls in a photo, and that's my daughter, she said, and her friend. They both died last year too. And she cried a little. I blessed the tree, giving thanks for the love and the light it represented, and asking that all those gathered in the photos under it be at peace and at rest. Rejoice anyway. Whatever may have you down this Advent season, today is a day to remember to give thanks for life. And the gaudier your thanks, the better. Because that gives your rejoicing all the more contrast against the darkness. We were not created by God for misery, anxiousness, and grieving. We were made for rejoicing. Every Rose Sunday, I remember the final verse of a poem by Madeleine L'Engle called First Coming. We cannot wait till the world is sane to raise our songs with joyful voice. For to share our grief, to touch our pain, he came with love. Rejoice, rejoice. May we never know sorrow so deep that we cannot see light and move towards it. May we never know happiness so great that we forget how suffering feels, and rejoice anyway.